ladies and gentlemen, if I can just request all of you to please take a seat. Welcome back. You're watching IGF Studio with me, Aarti Subramaniam. During the course of the morning, we've spoken geopolitics, we've spoken macroeconomics. In the next hour, we're going to talk about something which is called the living bridge between nations, between civilizations, and that is culture. And at the heart of culture lies stories and, of course, storytellers. We have a lot to unpack, and the person we're going to begin with is, well, to be honest, he doesn't need much of an introduction. He is India's first individual Olympic gold medalist. He is an icon, a legend, and an inspiration. Please put your hands together for the one and only Abhinav Bindra, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Hi, Abhinav. Yes, please have a seat. Thank you so much, Abhinav, for being here at IGF Studio. I said you're India's first, and for the longest time, in fact, only Olympic gold medalist. Does it feel good to have some company finally?
Absolutely, and I really hope that in a few weeks' time, we're going to have more people added to that list.
Yes.
Small list, but it'll improve.
It will keep growing. Now, you're also the torchbearer for the 2024 Paris Olympics, and you tweeted something or you put out something on social media for people who didn't make it, and I do want to read that out to everybody here. You said, life has its own way of challenging us, often not granting what we seek in the moments we desire. Yet every experience, especially the setbacks, is a stepping stone to greater strength. Now, you've scaled the highest summit, but you're clearly somebody who has seen setbacks and, dare I say, even self-doubts.
Well, two different subjects. I think my life was really more about failure because I failed much more than I succeeded, as is the case with most athletes. But I think success in sport and I think success in life is really about learning how to fail well. It's about learning to let go of the unwanted baggage failure brings, but use each experience as a stepping stone to learn, to grow, and to get better. And that is precisely what I try to do through the challenges of my own sports career, through the disappointments of my own sports career. It was all about getting back on the saddle, to say, and to really try again. It really is about never ever giving up and trying to show up every day with the right energy, with the right enthusiasm, to be the best that you can be, to be better than what you were yesterday.
What's more difficult? Because yes, of course, failure is difficult, but success is also quite difficult to handle, isn't it? Especially, there's so much of adulation, there's so much of pressure, and I do want to talk about pressure separately, but I'm just saying, is success as difficult to handle perhaps as failure?
For me personally, even tougher. Ironically, my darkest phase in my sporting career came not when I failed, but when I actually succeeded.
What do you mean?
Yeah, so my toughest phase was when I actually won the gold medal at the Olympics. Up until then, for 16 years of my life, I went to bed with one dream, that was to win a gold medal at the Olympics. And one fine day, I had this shiny gold medal in my pocket. I was all dressed up with nowhere to go. Success also creates a void. Success is also very, very draining. It takes a lot out of you physically, it takes a lot out of you mentally, it takes a lot out of you emotionally.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to step back to move ahead again. And that is what I experienced post Beijing. I was kind of lost with loss of motivation. And it is quite interesting how I did get that motivation back. For the longest period after Beijing, I actually wanted to give up and retire on this high and move on to something else, but I obviously didn't know what the something else was. So I ended up going on a Vipassana meditation course to find my new calling. And there I had to meditate for 10 hours a day for 10 days in silence. And all I did for 10 days was think back to my sport. And that gave me a realization that I really loved what I did.
Yeah.
I simply loved the process of executing my skill. And that really energized me and brought me back for more. But sometimes, success, when we are at a peak, human nature also is that, we want to jump to the next peak. But reality strikes soon. To jump to the next peak, you have to first climb down the peak you're at, and then step by step, try and climb the next peak. And that is also demands a lot of energy. So you also have to look after yourself and look after your well-being and try and make, your human well-being at the heart and center of performance. So it is a bit of a mix of everything that is really needed to deal with success well.
Well, for the sake of Indian sport, I'm glad you didn't have any epiphany there and say you're going to give up sport altogether. So I'm glad that Vipassana worked out well, not just for you, but Indian sport in general. Talking of pressure, especially once you, like you said, you wake up one morning, you have a gold medal in your pocket. There is so much of pressure externally. There's so much of noise externally. But also there is self-created pressure. There is the pressure that you put on yourself. So how should a sports person or how should a business leader, a politician, what about the own expectations that you create for yourself?
I'm not a good one to answer a question on pressure because I didn't deal with it well.
Why do you say so?
Because, I was in a kind of a lonely sport. Shooting is a very personal pursuit, a solitary pursuit. But I did have one constant companion in my 20 years of sport, and that constant companion actually was self-doubt. It traveled with me everywhere I went. And of course, I did a lot of work to try and have the belief needed, generally associated with athletes, worked with a lot of psychologists, this, that, and the other. But frankly, nothing really worked. But there was one breakthrough moment that did come in my life, and that was when, instead of chasing self-belief, I started to chase self-respect. And that to me was one of the greatest days of my life. And I chased self-respect by just giving it my all every day.
But what do you mean by that? When you say you chase self-respect, were you not respecting yourself enough then? What do you mean by that?
Well, it was about looking yourself into the mirror before I went to bed and asking myself the question, have I done my best today? And on the days, the answer was yes. I always had a good night's sleep. And I learned pretty early on that hard work is the best possible sedative that you can get. But it was really about doing your best every day, trying to be better than what you were yesterday. The Olympics didn't come once in 4 years for me, they came every day. It was about doing my best every day. And slowly but surely, I started to build my self-respect. And before I boarded that flight to Beijing, I again looked myself into that mirror and asked myself, did I do everything humanly possible to prepare for this pursuit, to prepare for my performance at the Olympics? And frankly, the answer was yes. I could have done nothing more. And there, even before I shot my first competition shot at that Olympic Games, I had already won. I had won in front of my own eyes. And that to me was invaluable. That to me gave me great self-assurance that no matter what the result would be and what the outcome would be, I would certainly have my pride.
Yeah.
And that I think is that is one of the greatest things that you can chase in life.
Certainly, and there are two things that really stand out for me, Abhinav, when you're speaking. One is you clearly are a perfectionist and you believe in practice. And I think after the 2004 Olympics, it all came together in terms of perfection and practice. And there's a story which I absolutely love, which if I could request you to tell everybody, it's about a tile being loose.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll leave that to you.
So in Athens, I had gone into the Olympics in Athens probably in the best shape of my life. And I had broken an Olympic record in the qualification competition, went into the final in third place, and to win a medal on that particular day, I had to shoot 10 very ordinary shots. I just ended up shooting the 10 worst shots of my life in that Olympic final. Couple of days later, they realized that the floor I was standing on had a loose tile underneath, which reverberated every time I picked up my rifle. And in a sport which is decided by a few tenths of a point, it was almost impossible to perform well. But that was what it was. I had to learn to accept it. I went back home, and one of the first things I did when I started training again was install a loose tile in my shooting range at home and started practicing on it so that if I ever had to encounter something like that, I would be prepared. But I think there were lessons in this failure as well. Since you brought it up, I'll take the liberty of sharing that experience with you.
Absolutely.
Going into Athens, I was a very outcome-driven individual, and the experience in Athens made me a very process-driven individual, and that I think was a big change. I was very detached from outcomes, and it was all about details for me. It was all about looking at the small things. It was all about perfecting each part of my performance. And that was a huge shift in mindset to really become this process-oriented person and really detaching myself from outcomes.
You went from there, you won your gold medal, and then the 2012 Olympics, though, that didn't turn out as you would have hoped for. How did you deal with that, firstly? And after that, you were in London, I think, for the Commonwealth Games and won a gold again. So I think the recurring theme is picking yourself up from failure or a setback. Do you want to call it a failure or a setback? How do you see it? How do you see not winning a gold medal?
An experience.
Oh, okay.
But may not have been the most pleasant one, but it was an experience nevertheless.
Okay, so we can go with that, right? So it's an experience. So there is this recurring theme of these experiences of picking yourself up from these experiences. But how do you get back on the saddle? Because it's all great to say you pull up your socks, you try again, you practice, but in reality, it's not as easy.
It is. You just simply have to remain honest to your goals.
Yeah.
That's what I was. I remained dedicated to my goals. No matter what the outcome, no matter what the experience, I always went after my goals with complete honesty, trying to give my best every day, no matter what the challenge in front of me was. And there were plenty.
Yeah. There is one thing, Abhinav, though, and with your permission, if I can talk to you about, you don't speak about this much, and that's the reason that you won't hear about this too much, is you actually have epilepsy. And in a sport like shooting, which is all about precision, even the slightest movement of your hand can make a huge difference. Now, what I find interesting is, one, you don't speak about it, and two, you never ever use it as an excuse. In fact, after the 2016 Rio Olympics, you were asked and you said, well, I didn't win because I wasn't good enough. It's as simple as that.
I never speak about it because I'm never asked about it. But no, I think I was diagnosed with epilepsy prior to the Olympics in Rio. And I think that was the phase I'm probably most proud of myself, how I picked myself up and really didn't pity myself. Because that is something that you can easily do in circumstances such as that. So once I had my first few seizures, the first things that I did was try and find help and try and find the best possible help in the world. Because when athletes face situations, health conditions and situations like that, they have to be dealt with very differently to normal folks, because we need to get back, and we need to get back very quickly and to a very high level of performance. So I got onto an airplane and found the best neurologists in the world and started dealing with the issue. And frankly, at that point of time when I was so vulnerable, when I didn't know what the next moment was going to be like, sport really became my refuge. And sport really continued to give me focus and meaning. And I think sport just helped me out of that situation. Performance in sport is also about really living in the moment. And it is very hard to achieve really finding that mindfulness to remain present at every moment. But one of those silver linings when I was diagnosed with epilepsy was I really had to live in the moment, because I really didn't know what the next moment was going to look like. And that actually ended up helping me in certain ways. So yes, it was a very difficult time of my life, but I did compete at the Olympics in Rio. I finished 4th. Just a 1/10 of a point away from another medal at the Olympics. And I was my greatest ever performance at the Olympics. I definitely finished 4th at the Olympics, not because I had epilepsy or I had a shaking hand. I finished 4th because I was simply not good enough for 3rd.
And that takes a lot to even admit sometimes, right? When you know that you have given it your all, but you weren't good enough on that day, that takes a lot to admit and to face.
Well, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, that is true. You actually called it a day after the 2016 Olympics as well. And to a lot of Indian fans, to a lot of supporters of the game, it was too soon. Firstly, what made you say, it's time to call it quits? And more importantly, the reason I ask you that, because a lot of sports persons, they continue to push themselves because they believe they have one more medal in them, they have one more century in them, they have one more, World Cup in them. And that's often to the detriment of the team or to the sport at large. And, we have with us business leaders, politicians who are also trying to push themselves, not really knowing when to call it time on their careers.
Well, I think you have to listen to your inner voice, and I think, and that is what I did listen to. I had a very long career in sport, 22 years in a sport like that. It is a long time, 5 Olympic Games, and I just thought it was the right time to move on to life's next challenges. And it is interesting, probably for everybody to know that I've never ever been back to a shooting range after my last shot at the Rio Olympics. I don't even own a rifle anymore.
Why so?
Well, sometimes to move ahead in life, you have to burn your past, because the obsessive personality that I had while competing, that was the only way. Cold turkey, I had to just simply give it up, and I'm absolutely fine with it. And
you've never regretted it, or you've never woken up one morning and said, you know what, let me see, I might just be able to.
No, I had a great closure to my sports career. I had a great closure to my sports career, not because I won medals and I achieved goals. I had a great closure because of the absence of regret. I could look back at my career and say that I had given it my all with everything that I had, and that was great. And that was one phase of my life, and I moved on to my next, and trying to contribute to society in different ways. Sometimes I think society and the public at large only looks at us as one-trick ponies, and that is our exploits on the field of play. But as athletes, like everybody of us, have many hats that we wear, and we are capable of making good contributions to society before our playing days, after our playing days, and that is simply what I'm trying to do. I've moved on to another phase of life, still involved in sport in some capacities, and I enjoy that, but certainly the playing days are well and truly over.
But sport is also about nation building, isn't it? And you say that athletes are not one-trick ponies, and they have so much to contribute in that sense to nation building.
Absolutely. I think sports' role to build a nation, and especially India, is immense, especially because of our very young demographic that we have. I think sport can instills character, builds character. We are living in a era where everything is changing very dynamically. Education is changing dynamically. Artificial intelligence is coming into education and is going to disrupt it in the course of the next many years. But one thing artificial intelligence is not going to be able to achieve is to instill values in young people. And there is no better activity than sport to instill values, to build character, to learn how to win, but more importantly, learn how to lose, to build teamwork, to build work ethic, to learn about to having a high sense of integrity. And that is what I think sport should be used for. We are a young country. We also have to be a healthy country, and sports contribution there can be immense. Gender equality, giving young girls an opportunity to play, sports role, and breaking glass ceilings. Sports role there is also extremely immense. And to be honest, sports role in unifying. There's no better thing than sport to unify our nation. So sports role has to be looked at it from a larger prism, and I'm sure, and we see signs of that happening. And I'm quite sure that the next decade or so will also be a decade of sport and developing sport in India.
Well, we're very grateful to you because we have you tomorrow as well with us, and we are going to talk in greater detail about India's Olympic ambition, the strides that we've been making in terms of our sporting infrastructure, what more we can do. But one final question, Abhinav, what next for you in the sense of what is the next big challenge? There are no regrets in the past, but what are the aspirations for the future?
Well, I learned to live in the present moment. Sport taught me that. So nothing can ever come as close as and exciting as chasing a gold medal at the Olympics. But for me, it is about enjoying the small pleasures of life, and the small goals of life. If I start to list them, they may not. It'll bore you all, but I have to say they're not less meaningful.
Thank you so much, Abhinav. It's been absolutely fascinating. A big round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen, for Abhinav Bindra.
Thank you very much. Thank you.